What is up, everyone, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the 3&D here on Empty the Bench Podcast Network. Make sure you hit subscribe below and follow our socials at the 3&D ETB and at ETB Network. Tonight's episode, we have jam-packed slate for you guys. We missed last week, so we're going to be filling you guys in on all the stuff that's going on. A bunch of stuff across the NBA, including Joel Embiid coming back, Julius Randle done for the season. Women's college basketball has been heating up. Controversial call in the UConn versus Iowa game we'll be going over. Bunch of head coaching moves in college basketball. Bronny James entering the draft, some more transfer portal news. And then, of course, we'll be previewing the national championship, which will take place tonight, the night of as this episode debuts. And then I'll be going over my final NBA power rankings before the playoffs start. So this week is going to be jam-packed. We got the national championship on Monday. We've got the final week of the NBA regular season, which will finish on this upcoming Sunday, and then we'll have the play-in tournament and everything. So, but first things first, we wanted to introduce our newest sponsor. The 3&D is presented by Playback. Watching sports is more fun with others, but we spend too much of our time watching alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience. From playing fantasy sports, repping your favorite players and teams, and watching with the commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. Join our community by going to playback.tv/ETB network to find out more, including our live stream schedule. Make sure to join us on Thursday, April 11th for our first live stream as the Bulls travel to the Motor City to take on the Pistons at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, and the Knicks will travel to Beantown to take on the Celtics at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. So Playback is now our newest sponsor. We're going to be doing a lot of live streams with them. So hope you guys can stay tuned in here on the Empty the Bench Network. We got a lot of fun stuff going on. So jumping right into things, we're going to hop into the NBA. Joel Embiid is back. So Sixers fans have been waiting for this day for a long time. Joel Embiid was out for a couple of months due to injury, but he returned to game action on Tuesday and helped lead the Sixers to 3 straight wins this week. He returned to action on Tuesday, playing 29 minutes against the Oklahoma City Thunder. He scored 24 points and had 6 rebounds. And then his second game against Miami, he had 29 points. In his last game against Memphis, he had 30 points and 12 rebounds in 23 minutes. So obviously Joel Embiid, last year's MVP, was probably the favorite to win MVP this season until he went down. But having him back is huge for the Sixers playoff run. The Sixers took a huge fall in the standings while Embiid was out. They are now sitting in the 8th spot in the Eastern Conference at 43-35. They have they're 1 game behind the Pacers for the 6th spot. So they're going to try their hardest in these last. They've only got 4 games left in the season. These last 4 games to try to get out of the play-in tournament. They're sitting in the 8th spot right now, so they basically play on the road against the 7th seed, but they're only 1 game behind the Pacers at 6. They're 2.5 games behind the Knicks at 5, which is going to be much more difficult to achieve with only 4 games left to make up 2.5 games. But possibly taking the Pacers spot at 6 is definitely in the cards. They're only 1 game behind the Pacers at 6. And they have a pretty easy schedule this week to end out the season. They're playing at the San Antonio Spurs on Sunday today, as the date of this episode being recorded. Then they'll be playing at home against the Detroit Pistons on Tuesday. They'll be at home against the Orlando Magic on Friday, and then at home against the Brooklyn Nets on Sunday. So Orlando is really their only tough matchup. San Antonio, Detroit, and Brooklyn have all been eliminated from playoff contention. So they got a pretty easy schedule the rest of the way for the last 4 games. 43-35 is their record. So they're going to be trying their hardest to get out of that play-in tournament. And Joel Embiid coming back is definitely huge, and we'll try to get them in the right direction. Another big injury news in the same division, Julius Randle being done for the season. So Julius Randle has missed over the last 2 months with a dislocated shoulder. He attempted to rehab it in a variety of ways, and he ended up re-injuring his shoulder and is forced to have surgery on the shoulder, which he was trying to put off so he can come back this season. But it was inevitable. Huge blow for the Knicks. He'll be shut down the rest of the season. He was averaging, obviously, Julius Randle. This was his 5th year with the Knicks and has been one of their star players ever since he came over. He made his 3rd All-Star appearance in those 5 years. This season, he was averaging 24 points and 9.2 rebounds in 46 games this year before he ended up going down. So he's missed the last 30 games practically. And it's a huge blow, obviously. But on the positive side, Mitchell Robinson is back and OG Anunoby are both back. 2 guys who missed several months themselves due to various injuries. They're both back for the Knicks for their playoff run. So it's going to definitely be a huge blow without Julius Randle. Probably, in my opinion, I thought they were an Eastern Conference Finals team if they were fully healthy. I think without Julius Randle, that's very tough. I don't really think anybody's going to beat the Celtics in the Eastern Conference. It doesn't seem like they've completely rolled over the Eastern Conference the entire season. They seem like they're destined to make it out of the East and make it back into the NBA Finals. So I would be shocked if the Boston Celtics don't end up winning. You don't end up winning the conference, but I thought that the Knicks could potentially make it to the Eastern Conference Finals, depending on what seed they get, of course. If they were to get a 6 seed or a 3 seed, they'd be able to do that, or a 2 seed. But if they end up getting the 4 or the 5, which is what they're probably going to end up getting, that's where they're sitting at right now, then they would play Boston in the 2nd round, and they probably don't win that series. But they do get Mitchell Robinson and OG Anunoby back. The Knicks have 5 games left in their season. They're playing at the Milwaukee Bucks Sunday. They're playing at the Chicago Bulls on Tuesday, at the Boston Celtics Thursday, at home against the Brooklyn Nets Friday, and then they end the season at home against the Chicago Bulls Sunday. So they got the Bulls twice, Brooklyn Nets, and then they're in Milwaukee and in Boston. So they don't have a very easy last 5 games of the schedule. You can argue that Chicago and Brooklyn are those 3 games should be pretty easy, but Boston and Milwaukee are 2 teams that they haven't been able to beat all season. So it's definitely going to be tough for them to end things out. The Knicks right now are sitting at 45-32, 5th place in the Eastern Conference. They're tied with the Orlando Magic. The Magic have the tiebreaker right now, so the Magic have the 4 seed. They're only half a game behind the Cleveland Cavaliers for the 3 spot, and they're only 2 games behind the Milwaukee Bucks for the 2 spot. And 2 games back with 5 to play, including a game against the Milwaukee Bucks. The 2 seed is still definitely in reach for the Knicks, even though it's not very likely. And they're only half a game behind the Cleveland Cavaliers for the 3 spot. So they're sitting in 5 right now, but they could easily move up to 3 very, very quickly. So this will definitely be a big blow for the Knicks, but they should still be able to avoid the play-in tournament and be able to, at the very least, get a 5 or a 6 seed, in my opinion. And we'll just have to wait and see. I mean, Jalen Brunson has done a great job of holding the team down while everybody was hurt. Randle, Anunoby, and Robinson were gone for a while. Hartenstein stepped up big time to replace Robinson. So they've been getting a lot of good beneficiary contributions from a few different players. So I think that's definitely been a big thing, and they're going to have to keep stepping up if they want to make it far in the playoffs. So, and jumping over from that, we're going to jump into some women's college basketball, including the controversial call that ended UConn's season and the Iowa versus UConn game in the women's Final Four. So, obviously, if you're a basketball fan, if you're honestly just a sports fan and not living under a rock, you've definitely heard about the controversial call that led to Iowa beating UConn in the women's Final Four. It was a moving screen that was called on UConn's Aaliyah Edwards with 3.9 seconds left in the game. If you go back and watch it, the moving screen was a clear moving screen. It was a blatant moving screen. She was still moving. By definition, it was definitely a moving screen, and it caused huge backlash from a lot of different people, including LeBron James, including a bunch of athletes, including a bunch of fans, as to if you should be able to call that in that kind of situation. Regardless, Iowa ended up winning the game 71-69, and they advanced to the national championship to play against South Carolina because of it. So UConn women's team ended up getting eliminated mainly because of that. The foul obviously sent Iowa to the free throw line and helped them seal the game. So my personal opinion on the entire issue is just like I was kind of like saying before, it was an offensive foul. It absolutely was. And I mean, I don't think you can really argue, oh yeah, it was definitely an offensive foul, but you can't call in that kind of situation. That's a very tough line to kind of cross because, a foul's a foul. Where do you exactly draw the line on what you can call in a certain situation? I totally understand, like nitpicky fouls and stuff and playing on and things like that, but you kind of have to establish that early in a game if you're the ref. And if you go the entire game with calling it by the book and every foul is a foul, it doesn't really matter if it's 3 seconds left in the game, and that basically ended it for UConn. We're good. Like that's pretty much the way that it's going to go. And that's the way that things are going to go in those kinds of situations. If it's a moving screen, it's a moving screen. It's the call is going to be the call. It's a tough situation. I totally get the whole backlash and not wanting to make a call like that in those kinds of situations and all those kinds of things, but I think it was kind of as blatant as it gets, and definitely a very difficult situation to make. And if you're the ref, put yourself in the ref's shoes. I think in this kind of situation too, you don't make that call, you have a ton of Iowa fans on your back about how that was a moving screen, how it was a missed call. If you do make the call, then you got a ton of people saying that you shouldn't have made the call in that kind of situation. So it's a lose-lose situation. Either way, South Carolina ended up beating Iowa in the national championship, and UConn's season ended, but Iowa's season ended the very next move. So there's a lot to unpack with that entire thing, regardless of what you thought it was. If you thought it was a ticky-tack foul or whatever, very, very, it's up to you what you truly thought it was going to be. And now jumping over into some head coaching hirings in college basketball. So some big news around USC. There's definitely been a couple of things going on in USC. Andy Enfield left USC for SMU and was replaced by Eric Musselman. So it was a very, very interesting move. Kind of out of nowhere, Andy Enfield decided to leave USC, where he's been at for 12 seasons. He's been a long-time head coach at USC, and out of nowhere, he decided to leave for SMU, which some could argue is kind of like a sideways move. We don't really know exactly why he did that, but USC ended up going out and snagging Arkansas head coach Eric Musselman, which I think was an amazing hire for USC, and I think he's a even better head coach than Andy Enfield is. Enfield, his rise to fame came when he was the head coach at Florida Gulf Coast. Obviously, you guys probably remember Lob City when they knocked off Georgetown as a 15 seed. He was the head coach of that team from 2011 to 2013, and right after that happened, he ended up getting the USC job in 2013 and had been there up until this season. So he led Florida Gulf Coast to the Sweet 16 in 2011 as a 15 seed. And then at USC, he did some good things. At Florida Gulf Coast, he was 41-28, 21-15 conference record. And then at USC, he was 220-146 overall record, 106-100 in conference play. He led USC to the Elite Eight in 2021 and made 5 tournament appearances in his 11 seasons as the head coach at USC. So he definitely did a good job. He brought in a lot of high-ranked 5-star recruits as well. Evan Mobley was one. Onyeka Okongwu was another one. Obviously, Bronny James was the past year. Isaiah Collier. He was able to land a lot of guys as incoming freshmen as well, and also a lot of transfers at the same time. And USC was kind of a basketball program that had fallen a lot when he took it over in 2013. They were not very competitive. They had not had very many good years in the Pac-12. Before that, they had some decent runs and decent seasons, but they were always known as a football school. And he kind of got there and kind of flipped the script a little bit and built up USC's basketball program a bit. And he did a very good job while he was there. So now he's going to be moving on to SMU, a team that has had history of being a pretty good basketball program, but has not really done anything in a long time. So he's going to see if he can try to build that one up. Eric Musselman, on the other hand, has been a fantastic head coach for a long time. He was Nevada's head coach from 2015 to 2019, and he was at Arkansas from 2019 to 2024. He was a longtime NBA assistant before that. He was also the Golden State Warriors head coach from 2002 to 2004, and was the Sacramento Kings head coach in the 06-07 season. So he's been around the game for a long time. His dad was a head coach as well, so he comes from a huge background of coaching. At Nevada, he was 110-34 with a 54-18 conference record. He brought them to the Sweet 16 in 2018, and then he coached one more season in Nevada, and then he got the Arkansas job. Then at Arkansas was another program similar to USC that had some history of some good teams, but just really did not do very much in recent years. And he got there and he kind of turned things around. He was 111-59 record while at Arkansas, 47-42 conference record. He brought them to 2 Elite Eights and 1 Sweet 16 in the 5 seasons he was at Arkansas. So pretty impressive that he was able to bring them that far. He brought in some big recruits too, some top draft picks while he was there. So he did a really good job while he was at Arkansas. Now he's going to be taking on USC, that a program that Andy Enfield kind of made very popular, and he's going to try to keep it going. And USC is joining the Big Ten now this year. Obviously, the Pac-12 kind of going under, so he's going to be joining USC in a time where they're jumping into a big-time conference as well. So very, very interesting move with USC and SMU, and that leaves a big question, though, Arkansas's job opening. Now that Eric Musselman left Arkansas to go take over USC, this leaves a big vacancy for the Arkansas job. Arkansas, obviously, like we were saying before, was not a big job, but Eric Musselman kind of built the program back up, so they're going to be looking to try to hire somebody to keep it going. Chris Beard and Jerome Tang were the 2 top guys who were the big names basically to start off right off the bat. And they both took their names out of the running. Chris Beard decided to stay at Ole Miss, and Jerome Tang decided to stay at Kansas State, where he had a tremendous first season, had a good year this past year, narrowly missed the tournament. Chris Beard obviously was a fantastic head coach, brought Texas Tech to the national championship, then got the Texas job, ended up getting fired due to a couple of scandals. But he was back and took the Ole Miss job and built up Ole Miss to barely miss out on the tournament this year. And Ole Miss is not a great basketball program, so he's going to try to continue to grow that program a little bit. Jerome Tang prefers to stay at Kansas State, where he's seeing some success in his first head coaching job. So that leaves the question, where does Arkansas go from here? A couple of other names have circulated in their head coaching search. Will Wade being a top one. Obviously, Will Wade was LSU's head coach for a long time. And He ended up getting fired due to recruiting scandals, and he was out of college basketball for a couple of years. He took over McNeese State this past year and led them to a 31-3 season, and they ended up making the tournament where they lost in the first round to Gonzaga. But he obviously took the McNeese State job to try to basically build up his resume once again after being kind of shunned. One negative about Will Wade, though, is if you were to hire him, he's got a lot of limitations in recruiting over the next few years that were passed down from the NCAA because of the recruiting violations he ended up getting fired from at LSU. He's got a lot of limitations with recruiting and stuff like that. So that's why a lot of teams probably are not going to touch him. He's going to probably have to coach a few years at McNeese State before he gets another big time job because because a lot of his recruiting, he's going to have a lot of recruiting issues throughout the next few seasons because he's got a lot of limitations as being passed down. And then a couple of other names that circulated. We don't know really if they have any interest in the program, though. Brian Dutcher from San Diego State. He's been at San Diego State for a long time. And Andy Kennedy, who just took over the UAB job, were a couple of names that have circulated. There's really since Chris Beard and Jerome Tang took their names out of the running, they pretty much there really hasn't been anyone else that has really been circulating big time to be the head coach. Those three names, Will Wade, Brian Dutcher, and Andy Kennedy, are all speculation of guys that could be good fits, but aren't necessarily in the running. And jumping over from that, we got some interesting news on Bronny James. So obviously with the college basketball season winding down, a lot of the guys are starting to enter the NBA draft and entering the transfer portal. So Bronny James decided to enter both. After a terrible freshman season at USC, averaged 4.8 points, 2.8 rebounds in 25 games for USC this past year after being a five-star recruit. The bottom line is he's not a 2024 NBA draft prospect. A lot of people are speculating what he's going to end up doing. He entered the transfer portal, obviously, as we were just talking about. Andy Enfield left USC to go to SMU, so people are wondering maybe he'll transfer to SMU. People are also wondering maybe he'll transfer to Duquesne, where Duquesne ended up making the tournament this year. They ended up winning a first-round game, and their head coach is LeBron's head coach from high school. That's why LeBron was rooting for Duquesne in the tournament throughout this year. So they were thinking maybe Bronny could end up going to play for LeBron's old coach at Duquesne. That would definitely be a big step down. He'd be going from the Pac-12 this past year to the A-10. It's definitely a big step down in conference, but it could be what he needs to get right back on track. He would probably become their star player. He'd probably become their piece that they would build around if he were to decide to go to Duquesne. But this is if he decides to stay in college. He also entered the NBA draft, and just like we were saying before, he's not a 2024 draft prospect. He is not projected to get drafted on virtually any mock drafts that you would see out there. If you were to decide to stay in the draft, I'm sure somebody will draft him in the second round at some point in hopes that he would attract LeBron to possibly come over. Because if you can't remember, LeBron has a player option this for next season with the Lakers, so he can become an unrestricted free agent this offseason. And a lot of people think that he may end up doing that. And if Bronny decides to stay in the draft, he might follow Bronny somewhere. He's already talked about how he wants to do that. And he, for some reason, though, he's talked about that for years, but he kind of retracted back those comments during this past season and was saying, well, I'm going to leave it up to Bronny if he wants to do that and stuff like that. So it makes things kind of interesting. I don't think Bronny should stay in the draft. I think that he has potential. I mean, he was a 5-star recruit. My personal opinion is he's probably going to have to be a 4-year guy in college. That's what I think he's got to be. And if he doesn't want to keep it going at USC, maybe taking a step down and going to a Duquesne and kind of having a big breakout season next year, and then decide to transfer again. I mean, you see guys transfer 4 times. up to 4 times. Like, guys transfer nonstop nowadays. So if he really wants to build himself up to being a first-round prospect and actually making a good NBA career, it's not staying in the NBA draft this season. It's going back to college for probably another couple of years at least, and potentially going back to USC. But a lot of guys are leaving USC. Kobe Johnson just left for UCLA. Isaiah Collier is going to be a top pick, so he's going to be leaving. And obviously, with Eric Musselman coming in, he's going to try to turn that program around. But I think Bronny's got to go back to college. He has to build up his game a little bit more. He's a tremendous defender right now. He's a great on-ball defender, but he has virtually no offensive game. He's not very explosive. He doesn't have a consistent jump shot, and he would get eaten alive if he were to go into the NBA next season. He's not NBA ready just yet. He's got the potential to be NBA ready, though. He's got the potential to be a first-round pick. I don't think he really has the potential to be a lottery pick, but he does have the potential to be a mid to late first-round pick and a solid NBA player. But he's got to continue to grow his game a little bit, and I think returning to college is his best bet. So it'll be interesting to see what he ends up doing. He's obviously in the transfer portal as well, so he'll be talking to other schools and seeing where to go from there. And now jumping over to some awards that kind of came out. Zach Edey wins National Player of the Year. This kind of came as no surprise to anybody. Edey won his second straight National Player of the Year after averaging 24.9 points, 12.2 rebounds, and 2.2 blocks in 38 games this year for Purdue. He was the most dominant player in all of college basketball. There's no doubt about that. And he was a layup to win National Player of the Year this season. There was not even a debate around that. He becomes one of the few guys to win National Player of the Year more than once in his college career. He won it for his second straight year. As a senior, he does have an extra year of eligibility left, but he already said that he plans on leaving Purdue and pursuing an NBA career after this season. His draft stock is very, very interesting. It goes anywhere from top 10 pick to a second round pick. There's so many scouts, NBA draft analysts, so many different people who have a variety of opinions on Edey and his impact in the NBA. One thing that could end up helping him big time is the fact that this year's draft is not projected to be very deep at all. It's projected to be pretty light, and he could end up being a first round pick because of that. But Zach Edey, he'll be playing the national championship this week, so that'll definitely be interesting to see. And then jumping over into a couple more head coach hirings that were big time. Charleston hires Chris Mack. So this was kind of one that kind of came out of the blue. Charleston had Pat Kelsey for a while. We'll be going over him in a few, but Charleston was one of the head coaching jobs that was rumored to be very, very highly sought after. People think because of the location of Charleston, it can attract some good competition, and it's probably one of the better mid-major jobs in the entire country. And they were not wrong, as Chris Mack they ended up being able to land Chris Mack, who's been out of the college game for the past 2 seasons, but decided to jump back into it. He was the head coach at Xavier from 2009 to 2018 and did a fantastic job at Xavier. He brought Xavier to the tournament 8 out of 9 years from 2009 to 2018. He brought them to 1 Elite 8 and 3 Sweet 16s in that time. And then decided to move on after 10 seasons at Xavier. He decided to move on to Louisville, where he was there from 2018 to 2022 and did not do a great job. It was there for 4 seasons, actually, I should say, and only brought them to 1 tournament appearance. His record at Xavier was 215-97. He was 105-49 in Big East play while at Xavier. And then at Louisville, he was 63-36, 38-23 in ACC play while he was there as well. So he didn't do a great job at Louisville. Louisville really just hasn't been able to do anything since Rick Pitino left. Chris Mack was Rick Pitino's replacement after After he left Louisville, and then obviously when Chris Mack left, Kenny Payne took over, and after 2 seasons, he's out of the Louisville job, and so Charleston is now. So Chris Mack's going to try to build up his resume a little bit more, get himself back into big-time college basketball by possibly building up Charleston's program. And jumping over from him, we got the guy who built up Charleston into one of the more sought-after jobs in college basketball, in all of college basketball, was Pat Kelsey. And Louisville hired Pat Kelsey to be their head coach. Pat Kelsey was the head coach of Winthrop from 2012 to 2021. He was there for a long time. And then he was Charleston's head coach from 2021 to 2024. He led Winthrop to 2 tournaments and was able to lead Charleston to 2 tournaments in 3 years, the past 3 seasons. He ended up doing a great job at Charleston. And he kind of built up that program into from basically nothing into one of the highly sought after mid-major jobs out there. And Chris Mack ended up, because of Pat Kelsey, Chris Mack ended up getting landed at Charleston. So Pat Kelsey truly built up that Charleston program. And now he's going to be tasked with the job of bringing Louisville back into the limelight, because Louisville was historically has been one of the best basketball programs in the country. And they have been in a very, very tough past 7 years where they have not been able to compete very much since Rick Pitino left. Obviously, they won a national championship. I think it was 2012 or 2013 under Rick Pitino. But after Pitino left, they haven't been able to do anything. Chris Mack was not able to help them. Kenny Payne was not able to help them. So they're hoping that Pat Kelsey will be able to turn things around. And he's off to a promising start as he's landed 3 of the better transfers in the transfer portal already for next season. 2 of his guys from Charleston, guard Rain Smith, who averaged 12.8 points and 2.1 rebounds at Charleston, and forward James Scott, who was actually a big-time freshman, a big-time recruit that Kelsey was able to land at Charleston this past year. Didn't really play much. He's a 6'11 freshman, so he's a little bit raw, but he's going to be following Kelsey to Louisville, and will be able to potentially become one of the better big men in the ACC over the next couple of years. He was a freshman this past year. He's got 3 years of eligibility left, so Kelsey's going to continue coaching him in a Power 6 conference. And then they were also able to land one of the top guys in the transfer portal, star from James Madison, Terrence Edwards. James Madison obviously had a fantastic year this past year. They were ranked for a portion of the year. They ended up winning a game in the tournament, basically the best season they've had in program history. Terrence Edwards was their star player, averaged 17.2 points and 4.4 rebounds as a senior this past year. He's got 1 year of eligibility left as a graduate, and he'll be going to join Pat Kelsey at Louisville with that year of eligibility left. So Kelsey's already landed three guys in the transfer portal, and it'll be interesting to see what else he's able to do. And jumping over from that, we'll be looking at a little bit of the transfer portal. There's been a lot of stuff going on in the transfer portal. A lot of big names have entered it, obviously, with the season being over for many teams. And right off the bat, a couple of interesting names. Florida Atlantic guards Janelle Davis and Elijah Martin both entered the transfer portal. They've been at Florida Atlantic for 4 years. They've got their grad year left, both of them. So they're going to be looking to play a 5th year at possibly a big-time school. Early prediction could be that they end up joining Dusty May at Michigan. Dusty May was the head coach of Florida Atlantic and had them competitive over the past couple of years, brought them all the way to the Final Four last season. He just took over the Michigan job. So Janelle Davis, who was also named the A-10 Player of the Year this past year for Florida Atlantic, he will be entering the transfer portal. So be interesting to see if the 2 of those guys join Dusty May in Michigan. UCLA was able to land a couple of big-time names already. Sky Clark, who was a transfer from Louisville. He started at Illinois and ended up transferring to Louisville this past year to join Kenny Payne. Louisville had a terrible year, so He ended up leaving, and now he's going to be joining UCLA. And Kobe Johnson will also be jumping from USC to UCLA. Was one of USC's star players this past year, a great defensive combo forward who has a grad year left, and he'll be joining UCLA. So UCLA already landing two of the better transfers. Memphis already landed Illinois big man Dane Danger, who had a fantastic year for Illinois this past year. He decided to enter the transfer portal, and Memphis was able to snag him. So Penny Hardaway once again doing a great job on the transfer market and in his freshman market, but he's still in question to see if he can actually make a competitive team. He's been doing a great job in recruiting. He has not been doing a great job in being competitive. And some other big names who are in the transfer portal right now: Oakland star Trey Townsend, who was one of the better stories of March Madness. The star big man of Oakland, the team that beat Kentucky. He's in the transfer portal. AJ Storr, who had a great season for Wisconsin this past year. Great Osabor, who's a star player at Utah State. Cliff Omarui from Rutgers. Vlad Golden, who's also from Florida Atlantic. We'll see if he garners any interest from Michigan as well. Jamal Mashburn Jr. From New Mexico, who also has a grad year left, are some of the big names who have entered the transfer portal and haven't really done anything yet. Some of those guys have also entered the NBA draft as well, so they may go through the draft process before they decide if they want to transfer or if they want to go back to school. But Trey Townsend, I think, is one guy to really look after. He was a mid-major star at Oakland and definitely should be getting some interest from some big-time programs around college basketball. So I think that those are all going to be some interesting stuff. So that's the transfer portal, some of the news around the transfer portals. And jumping over from that, the national championship preview. So Monday nights, we will know our 2024 NCAA champion. Obviously, this past weekend's Final Four ended up giving us Purdue versus UConn being the national championship. And honestly, I'm not a fan of either team. Both teams are great. Personally, I'm not a fan of either team, but this was a very fitting national championship, in my opinion. These were the two most dominant, most consistent teams all season, and they're the two most deserving teams to make it to the national championship. I think this national championship is going to be an all-out dogfight. I really, really like the potential of this matchup. I think that's going to be really good. It's two varying programs. UConn has won 5 national championships: 1999, 2004, 2011, 2014, and last year, 2023. They're 5-0 in school history in the national championship too, so they've never lost a national championship. And Purdue, on the other hand, has very rarely even made it to the Final Four. They've only made it to one national championship. In 1969, they lost to UCLA when the UCLA used to have those stacked teams under John Wooden. This was only their third ever Final Four and their first one since 1980. They made the Final Four in 1969, 1980, and 2024. So this was only their third ever Final Four, and this will be their second appearance in the national championship. And great for Matt Painter. This is Matt Painter's 19th year as head coach of Purdue. He played at Purdue from 1989 to 1993. He's a longtime Purdue guy. 5-time Big Ten regular season champion, 2-time Big Ten tournament champion. He's always had the knock. He's been able to turn the Purdue program around completely. They were not a big basketball program when he took over the job, and he's been there for 19 years now and has had them practically competitive every single year. The one knock on him, though, is that he's never been able to make it far in the tournament, and he's made it all the way to the national championship this season. He's had some big-time recruits. He's put some big-time guys in the NBA, but his struggles of winning in the tournament and winning a national championship has always been there for him, and you can't really say that anymore as he's made it all the way to the national championship. And then Dan Hurley, on the other hand, head coach of UConn. He's in his 6th year at UConn. He's been a head coach for a long time and has got an illustrious history in his family of being a head coach. His father was a longtime head coach in the New Jersey high school scene at St. Anthony's. He puts a bunch of guys in the NBA, but he was, I think at St. Anthony's High School for 40 years or so, just retired recently. His brother, Bobby Hurley, was a star basketball player, played at Duke, played in the NBA for a little while, was in a car accident and ended up cutting his career short, but he's currently the head coach at Arizona State, Bobby Hurley. And Dan Hurley played at Seton Hall and wasn't really looked at as a tremendous player, but has been a fantastic head coach. He was the head coach of Wagner from 2010 to 2012. He was at University of Rhode Island from 2012 to 2018, and he took over the UConn job back in 2018. This is his sixth season now. He won the national championship last year, obviously for UConn, so he's got one under his belt. And he's looking for a second straight, and UConn could be the first team since Florida was able to do it back-to-back in 2006 and 2007. They could be the first team since Florida to win back-to-back national championships. Very, very, very difficult to do. But UConn probably would be the early favorite in this game. The one main matchup, though, I'm looking for, and I think every college basketball fan and basketball fan in general is looking for, is Donovan Clingan versus Zach Edey. Two complete Goliaths in the paint. The two biggest big men presence in college basketball throughout the entire season. Clingan 7'2", close to 300 pounds. Zach Edey 7'4", 300 pounds. Two guys who have practically been unguardable all season long. There's been nobody who has had the skill in the paint or the size in the paint to really match up with either one of them. So the two of them are going to go head to head. This is kind of a matchup that every college basketball fan has wanted to see all season long, and we're going to be able to see it. So this is going to be a fantastic matchup. Clingan versus Zach Edey, two of the best and most consistent players in college basketball. Clingan will probably be a lottery pick this year. Zach Edey probably be a first-round pick at some point, maybe a lottery pick. Be very, very interesting to see. And comparing the two teams' starting fives, Purdue, their starting five is Zach Edey, Braden Smith, Lance Jones, Fletcher Lawyer, and Mason Gillis. Zach Edey, obviously, won National Player of the Year for the second straight year, averaging 24.9 points a game, 12.2 rebounds, and 2.2 blocks. Braden Smith had a fantastic season as their lead guard, averaged 12 points, 7.5 assists, and 5.9 rebounds while shooting 43% from three. Lance Jones is the slasher as a forward, averaged 11.9 points and shot well from three-point. Fletcher Lawyer is the spot-up shooter for the team, averaged 10.6 points this season, shot 44.7% from three. And Mason Gillis was the defensive-minded slasher as well as a forward. He averaged 6.7 points, 3.9 rebounds, and shot 47.2% from three. So the common theme is both of these teams can knock down the three ball too. They're both two of the best teams in the country at shooting, with Gillis, Lawyer, and Smith all shooting well above 40% from three this season. Lance Jones very, very, very shortly behind them. And then the starting five for UConn, Tristan Newton is their star player. Was a first-team All-American this year, and Cam Spencer was the grad transfer star three-point shooter. Alex Caravan, Donovan Clingan, and Stephon Castle is their starting five. Tristan Newton, first-team All-American, was 14.9 points, 6.6 rebounds, and 6.2 assists. Cam Spencer averaged 14.4 points and shot 44.3% from three. Alex Caravan was the 3-and-D guy for them. Averaged 13.5 points and 5 rebounds while shooting well from the field. Donovan Clingan, obviously, but their star big man in the paint, averaged 13.1 points and 7.4 rebounds and 2.5 blocks. And Stephon Castle was their star freshman, 5-star recruit who's going to be a lottery pick this year. Had a little bit of a rough start to the season, but ended up averaging 11 points, 4.7 rebounds, and 2.9 assists on the season. He is a point guard, but he didn't really play too much point guard this year. Tristan Newton was mainly the guy who ran, who was the main playmaker for UConn this past year. So this is going to be a fantastic matchup. I'm excited to my two things that I'm excited for is Klingen versus Edey and the 3-point shooting from both these teams, because both these teams have guys who can absolutely light it up from three, get hot at any moment, and this is going to be a very back and forth game. I think, my personal opinion, I think UConn's going to end up winning it in a very, very slight edge. But I think that UConn probably wins their second straight national title. But it's going to go back and forth, and I think either team can win this game. They're the two most consistent teams throughout the entire season, two most dominant teams throughout the entire season. So it's going to be a fun one. This is the national championship that I think a lot of people didn't want, because a lot of people, unless you're a UConn or Purdue fan, a lot of people have strong opinions against both of these teams. But as a true basketball fan, as a true college basketball fan, deep down, you kind of wanted to see this matchup in the national championship, because these were the two best teams all season long. So that's the national championship preview. I can't wait for Monday for this game to go down. It's going to be an awesome one. And to wrap up the show, we'll jump back into some NBA. We'll be doing my final NBA power rankings. We haven't done these in a few weeks, but with 1 week left in the NBA season, these are my final top 5 teams in the NBA. At number 5, I got the Oklahoma City Thunder. OKC has had a fantastic year this year. They're 52-25 right now, third place in the Western Conference. They're a game and a half behind Denver for the 1 seed, so they're sitting in 3 right now, but they're still in play for the 1 seed. They're only 1 game behind Minnesota for the 2 seed as well. So it's really going to be a fight between the Nuggets, Timberwolves, and Thunder to see who is 1, 2, and 3 in the Western Conference come playoff time. They all have a pretty significant lead ahead of anyone else outside the top 3. So it's going to be those 3 in the mix. OKC's got a pretty easy so-so last 5 games of the season lined up. They're at the Charlotte Hornets on Sunday. First, they're at home against the Sacramento Kings on Tuesday. At home against the San Antonio Spurs on Wednesday. At home against the Milwaukee Bucks on Friday, and then they end the season at home against the Dallas Mavericks on Sunday. So they play their final away game today again at the Charlotte Hornets, and they have 4 straight home games to end the season against the Kings, Spurs, Bucks, and Mavericks, which are some tough games. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has had a fantastic year, averaging 30.3 points, 6.3 assists, and 5.5 rebounds. Jalen Williams broke out, averaging 19.5 points. And Chet Holmgren, I think, was the most positive story all season for the Oklahoma City Thunder. After missing his entire rookie season, he came out and played every single game this year. He's played all 77 games so far. We'll see if he misses any of the last 5 games, but he's on pace to play in all 82 games this year after missing his entire rookie season due to injury after tearing his ACL. He also averaged 16.6 points, 7.9 rebounds, and 2.4 blocks, while being one of the best defensive big men in the NBA. So I think Chet Holmgren was a huge positive for them. And then at number 4, I got the Dallas Mavericks. The Mavericks are on a tear right now. They're 47-30 on the season. They're sitting 5th place in the Western Conference. They're 2 games behind the Los Angeles Clippers at the 4 seed. The main reason that I have them in the top 5, though, is because they're 9-1 in their last 10 games, and they've won 13 of their last 15. So they're on a complete tear. They were in shambles at this point a month ago. They were in the play-in tournament, and we're looking at another kind of choke job from a Luka Doncic-led team. But they've completely turned things around, won 13 of their last 15. They're going to end the season at home against the Houston Rockets on Sunday, at the Charlotte Hornets on Tuesday, at the Miami Heat on Wednesday, at home against the Detroit Pistons on Friday, and then they end the season in Oklahoma City against the Thunder on Sunday. Luka Doncic is on pace to win the scoring title this year, averaging 33.8 points and almost triple-double, 9.8 assists, 9.2 rebounds. Kyrie Irving also had a fantastic season, averaging 25.4 points, 5.2 assists. And then at number 3, I got the Minnesota Timberwolves. They're 53-24, sitting 2nd place in the Western Conference. They're only half a game behind. They're only half a game behind the first place Denver Nuggets, and they're 1 game ahead of the Oklahoma City Thunder. So they can very well, they're very well on pace to end the season in first place in the Western Conference. They've got 5 games left as well. They will be taking on the Los Angeles Lakers in LA on Sunday, at home against the Washington Wizards on Tuesday, in Denver to take on the Nuggets on Wednesday, at home against the Hawks on Friday, and then they end the season at home against the Suns on Sunday. Karl Anthony Towns is still hoping to return come playoff time. It'd be a huge blow if he's not able to come back, but Anthony Edwards has had an MVP caliber season, averaging 25.9 points, 5.6 rebounds. Rudy Gobert is the favorite to win his 4th Defensive Player of the Year this year after not having a great first year as a Timberwolf. He bounced back in his second year, averaged 12.8 rebounds and 2.1 blocks this season for the Timberwolves, and has been a star. And then at number 2, we have the Denver Nuggets, the reigning champs. They're 54-24, first place in the Western Conference by half a game. As we were just saying, they have a half-game lead over the Timberwolves. They only have 4 games left in the season. They'll be at the Utah Jazz on Tuesday. They'll be home against the Minnesota Timberwolves on Wednesday, which is going to be a very, very important game on Wednesday. Definitely tune into that one. Then they're at San Antonio to play the Spurs on Friday, and then they end the season in Memphis to play the Suns, to play the Grizzlies on Sunday. Nikola Jokic is the favorite to win his 3rd MVP in 4 seasons, averaging 26.4 points, 12.4 rebounds, and 9 assists. And Jamal Murray also averaging 20.8 points. And then number 1 is obviously the Boston Celtics. They've had a ridiculous season, 61-16 record. They've clinched the top seed in the Eastern Conference. They've clinched the best record in the entire NBA. They're on a 4-game winning streak currently, and they have 5 games to end the season. 4 of them are home games too, so they should have a smooth sailing to potentially have a 65-win season, which we almost never see in the NBA. To win at least 4 of the last 5. They're at home against the Trailblazers on Sunday. They'll be in Milwaukee to take on the Bucks on Tuesday, at home against the Knicks on Thursday, at home against the Hornets on Friday. Then they end the season at home against the Wizards on Sunday. Jason Tatum has averaged 27 points a game, 8.2 rebounds, and Jaylen Brown averaging 23.2 points at 5.5 rebounds. So that's my top 5. Number 5 is the Oklahoma City Thunder, 4 Dallas Mavericks, 3 Minnesota Timberwolves, 2 Denver Nuggets, and 1 Boston Celtics. And that'll do it for another episode of the 3&D. I want to thank everyone for tuning into the Empty the Bench Podcast Network for another episode. Once again, make sure you like and subscribe to this channel and follow the social at the 3&D ETB. Once again, we'll be putting out content all week. This was a jam-packed episode, a lot of stuff to unwrap. So I thank you to everybody who watched the entire episode. We'll be putting out content all week on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. So make sure you're following us and following Empty the Bench as we'll be putting out content if you weren't able to watch the entire episode. Hope everyone has a great night, and make sure to like and subscribe to Empty the Bench on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Have a good night.